Good afternoon. My name is Phoenix. I'm the event organizer of Conferencia World. Here, I would like to welcome and thank all of you participating in the Global Back Office and Operational Efficiency webinar. Conferencia World is a professional event management company. We organize international conferences and aim to connect the business leaders on a single platform in order to add value to the business. Today, we are more than happy to have Oliver Volk to be our speaker for this section. Oliver is a senior runoff manager of Allianz, and he's also a blockchain enthusiast and keynote speaker of different conferences. And there will be a Q&A section after the presentation. So if you have any question, please simply put in the chat room, or you could ask our speaker directly after the presentation. So now let's welcome Oliver.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone participating. It's interesting to have this kind of presentation in a webinar because I can't see anyone. I have to rely that 18 people are there, and I hope that you will have some questions in the end, because what I really usually always like, if people ask questions, make their mind about, because presentations are just presentations. So I try to have not too many slides, but talk more and either note your question or raise it in the end. I hope that you're all comfortable, most likely in the home office, I would assume. Hopefully the kids are somehow not directly in your room, or they can do other things. It's difficult times, but we learn how to manage certain things. It's good to see that digitalization works, even if it doesn't work that good in the schooling system. But let's see how this will bring us forward. It fits to the topic we have for today, which is future technology trends. Here I will focus on blockchain / distributed ledger technology. From what I understood is that you are more or less all from the finance / insurance industry, or likely industries, and I assume you are not IT colleagues, but more related to the business, which would be very good, because I'm not an IT guy too. So I hope no one will tell me what I did present correctly or incorrectly. So I'm a business person too, and like Phoenix said, I'm an enthusiast of blockchain technologies. I'm speaking on my own behalf with all the information and the experiences I gathered being with Allianz and talking to other people. But let's start and let's see how we can tackle that issue. So first, what I assume you will know is different kind of decision trees, and of course there's also various different blockchain decision trees. The one I usually present at the beginning and I want to share with you is the blockchain decision tree, which looks like, do I need a blockchain? No. That maybe sounds a little bit astonishing, as I'm a blockchain enthusiast, but it's just about the question. So for me, the question, do I need a blockchain, is a wrong question. It would be like I ask someone, do you need a spaceship? Most likely not, but there are some reasons and some people who would like or who need a spaceship. So it always depends. You have at first to analyze the pain point of the customer, and you have to analyze the process before you can present a solution. And this is what happened in the past. It's getting much better with blockchain technology, but in the past it looked like, oh, blockchain, this is the new silver bullet and we can solve any problem with it. It's a solution for many things and very valuable, but you first have to analyze the problem and then you have to present the appropriate solution technology that might be blockchain, but that also might be other means like artificial intelligence or usual technologies, usual solutions from SAP or other players which already have something in their shelf. This is the most technical slide I have. It shows the different kind of networks we are usually talking about. So we all know the centralized network, which we most likely have in all our companies, where we have one administrator and all the other nodes or dots connected to the administrator. So at least we have a single version of truth here, but it's all governed and connected with the administrator. Then there are decentralized networks, which you might know from multinational companies who have affiliates in different countries. Then they have kind of hubs where they're gathering information, and those hubs are connected to each other. What we talk about is the pictures here on the right-hand side, the distributed ledger. Distributed ledger means that, or distributed network, that each and every participant is connected to the other participants. So there's no area where certain things are stored, but it's like if you change something, or the other participants will see that there's a change too, as long as the change is confirmed. So this is something where you can't attack a certain point because you have one truth, one copy for everyone, but everyone is working on the same copy. You can maybe compare it a little bit if you have ever worked with an Excel file which you can share. There's the share function on Excel. Then you can change things and other people can change things too. And as soon as you save your version, you will be notified that there had been other people who did some changes, but you are not, those changes won't be shown to you. You don't see who did it and where it did. So this is much more convenient in a distributed network. But this is what we, in principle, if we talk about distributed ledger or blockchain technology, talk about. Very important slide. The first application of blockchain technology was Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is not the same as blockchain technology. So what is the difference? Usually ask people or ask for raising their hands, but that's a rhetoric question now, so let me explain it. Every one of you has an smartphone, maybe two smartphones, one for private use, one for business uses. Every smartphone does have an operating system, be it like iOS or Android or other systems. This operating system is comparable to the blockchain technology. This is the underlying technology for Bitcoin, for example. Yeah. If you look on your smartphone, you have various applications on your smartphone, and this is in our analogy Bitcoin, for example. Like Bitcoin is one application running on blockchain technology. So we have the underlying operating system and the applications, and this is very important to understand. It's also a little bit comparable to the internet, and on the internet or via the internet you can do e-commerce, you can send emails, you can arrange and organize your whole life, but this is very important to understand. Maybe one short note aside, I can't raise a question again, it's difficult, but I hope you have heard about the name Satoshi Nakamoto. If not, a quick explanation, because this is interesting to understand. Satoshi Nakamoto is a synonym. Nobody knows what's behind that, if it's a person, if it's a group of people. In 2008, there was a white paper published on the internet by the synonym Satoshi Nakamoto. It's only 8 pages, and it describes the underlying blockchain technology in very mathematical, but not that difficult world. So I only can encourage each and everyone to Google the white paper of Satoshi Nakamoto. It's very interesting. And my second and more important recommendation is I only can suggest or recommend that every one of you is spending, let's say, 50 euro to buy some parts of Bitcoin or Ether or name it. There are more than 1,000 cryptocurrencies which you can deal with, which you can buy. Why I'm recommending this? It's not an investment strategy, but if you want to do this, then you have to research, where can I get this? What do I have to do for? You have to download usually a wallet on your smartphone. That's an app where you can store the share of the cryptocurrency you bought. So here clearly it's the way to do it, which gives you so much experience so that you can really afterwards say, I got a better understanding of what's going on, just on how we can use it. It's maybe comparable to getting your first email address in the 90s, but really think about spend 50 euros to get a share of a cryptocurrency. It's not that easy, but it takes some time to research it, but it's really worth it. Many of you have heard about blockchain myth. Let's tackle some of the myth. I would assume you have heard about miners, especially if you talk about Bitcoin and the miners. They use computers with huge energy consumption to get Bitcoins and to solve complicated calculations, which you need to solve certain problems, which is the algorithm behind a public blockchain. But mentioning this, there are public blockchains and there are private blockchains. So the miners are only needed for the public blockchains. And this is also a big difference to our analogy with the smartphone compared to the internet. There's only one internet which everyone uses, but blockchain technology, there are different technologies. Yeah, it's blockchain for Bitcoin is one which many people will know, but there's another technology called Ether, which also had the cryptocurrency called Ethereum. But if you work in the enterprise world, or if you look into the enterprise world, there's a technology called Hyperledger Fabric, run by a number of companies led by Microsoft, and there's one called Corda. So there are different blockchain technologies with different advantages and disadvantages, but all of them have either a public blockchain key or a private blockchain. So if you need miners, then you're on the public blockchain world. If you go to the private world, then you do not need miners. So therefore, not every solution needs miners. There's only one blockchain, so we just elaborated about that. There are different blockchain technologies and they are still developing. So the white paper from Satoshi Nakamoto was from 2008, but the latest blockchain technologies like Hyperledger Fabric or Corda, they only had been invented 3 or 4 years ago. They are not better or superior to other technologies, but they have certain advantages because they more focus on the enterprise world, where you do not need that kind of anonymity you would like to have, for example, a cryptocurrency, because if you're in the enterprise world and you have a solution where, for example, the supply chain industry is taking care of, then you know your participants. It's not open for each and everyone, like everyone can register for email address. That would be then the public way. But if we talk about the private way, then we have other solutions. So therefore, no, there's not only one blockchain. Distributed ledger and blockchain, that's very interesting. You can more or less summarize it like that. Distributed ledger technology has different kind of underlying technologies. Blockchain would be one part of distributed ledger, but there are other technologies which are also distributed ledger technologies, but not blockchain. If we talk about blockchain, then we usually talk about the public systems where we do have a consensus algorithm, where we do have miners, but that's not clearly defined what is what, and most people use blockchain for the technologies because it either sounds better or they just don't know, or people just put it together. But for you, good to know, the distributed ledger is the main term, and blockchain is one part of a distributed ledger system. Blockchain is just for finance. Yeah, that was what maybe people thought at the beginning, because finance is usually 0 and 1. It's just figures, or mainly figures. We don't talk about products. So that would be very appropriate for that. But similar for insurance industry. So there we also have a lot of figures. We have contracts, which is helpful to use blockchain for, and we are very paper driven in the insurance industry. So therefore, with that technology, it's helpful too. Meanwhile, blockchain technology is tested in almost any industry, supply chain, provenance, you name it, because if we talk about connecting different stakeholders and having one single version of truth, for example, that's a benefit and advantage for mainly any industry, but it has to prove that is an advantage over existing technologies. And here we are still a little bit struggling, because the cryptocurrency run on a blockchain technology, excuse me, this is really a killer application, but besides that, there are many use cases, minimum viable products, but nothing yet, which is really a killer application in another area. Main reason for that, from my point of view, is that the whole ecosystem still has to develop. Good example, which we all can see now, is like if this webinar would have been announced in the 90s, there still was the internet, and there was a modem, and maybe there already had been some cameras, but I would assume that it would have been impossible to stream it in the 90s, because the speed of a modem and your hardware set up at home very likely wouldn't have allowed it to do this webinar. Nowadays, it's very easy, and no question about if it's possible, just a question about how we can do it. So compared to the blockchain ecosystem, the technology is there. We see various different blockchain technologies to be created and developed, and now we're looking for applications, but still there are many things which still have to be analyzed and have to be tested in terms of regulators. What is a regulator testing if you have a solution in the finance or in the insurance world? What about the legal issues if you have some solutions based on a virtual blockchain service? Who is responsible? What is the court decision? Still, the technology is an issue, because in some areas we have speed issues which will be developed. So it's still developing, and it's still something which has to be further worked on, but therefore we cannot expect that there will be a solution which is so disruptive as thought at the beginning, but it's an ongoing process. Smart contracts are legal documents. You might have heard about the smart contracts. So the smart contracts are neither smart nor real contracts. It's just a program code. As most contracts, especially in the insurance industry, it's an if-then contract. So if you do have a car accident, then the insurance will pay under certain circumstances, and this can be translated in a program which then can be automated in certain areas. This is something which will happen in the future. For the time being, it's more like that we use the technology to automate processes which are still very, very manual. But smart contracts, that will be something which will be very beneficial if we talk about IoT devices. Imagine if your refrigerator will order food or milk because the milk gets empty in the fridge, and this will be detected by some sensors at the next grocery. This all can be automated, but then you do need some contracts running behind their payment process and a contract to make sure that you are eligible for buying that. This can be supported via smart contracts, but still this is something which has to be further tested and developed, but I'm quite sure that it's a good area where we can use that technology. I talked about it, the public versus the private blockchains, just a brief summary. So the access is different. A public blockchain is permissionless, so you do need a permission to participate in a public blockchain, comparable to an email address. If you go to hotmail.com, if you go to yahoo.com, you can register an email address in a couple of seconds or minutes, versus a private blockchain. The access is restricted. It's a permission blockchain. This is, for example, if you are using the intranet in an enterprise environment, therefore you have to be registered in this enterprise or be an employee, then you can access it. So this is the main difference in terms of access. If you talk about speed, here we can link back to the miner issue. The public blockchain technology is supposed to be slower because there we have the mining for the so-called consensus algorithm. The consensus algorithm makes sure that a certain task will be fulfilled and will be confirmed, and this has to be technically solved via complex mathematical operations. In terms of the private blockchain, we do not more or less need that, because if it's in a world we do need the participants, then we don't make sure that we have this anonymity and this trust, because there still is someone who is responsible for that, which is not the case in a public blockchain environment. The identity, again, if we are in a public blockchain environment, you're more or less anonymous. You have certain things which can lead to someone, but it's more or less only an ID address, so it's anonymous. While in a public blockchain world, in the enterprise, it's a know your customer KYC process. In terms of ownership, a public blockchain, there is no administrator. So if something doesn't work based on a public blockchain technology, there's no helpline, there's no one which you can ask for advice. It hasn't happened in the past, but still it's like it is. Well, while in a private blockchain world, there is an administrator. and therefore the pure blockchain evangelists, well, for them only a public blockchain is a real blockchain, and a private blockchain is something which is limited, but still it has advantages, and therefore in the enterprise world it will be used. Of course, there are also hybrid solutions where you can create private blockchains based on a public blockchain layer, but this is something which future will show us, which will be the best option. Blockchain is a platform solution. So if you do have a direct access to customer or to a client, it's most likely not the best use case to use blockchain technology. But as soon as you have different players, different stakeholders, it does make sense to think about a blockchain solution. And this can work within your own company as an intra-group solution. Therefore, it makes sense that you have a big company, ideally a multinational company. So if you have connections to other countries and you have to exchange certain data or information, then you can try to create your own blockchain solution for accounting purposes, finance purposes, administration purposes, you name it. There are many areas where you can think about. But the most interesting and the playground where the most projects are happening right now is the industry-wide layer. As you might have noticed, most or many of the blockchain solutions are for the finance industry or for the insurance industry or for the supply chain industry. Why that? Here, people try to set a standard for the whole industry, which doesn't give you a competitive advantage over other players in that area, but it helps the whole industry to automate certain processes and to get certain benefits in terms of administration or reconciliation of data, in terms of immutability of data. And the good thing is that even in industries which are very competitive, we have seen many examples where the leading players sit together, exchange about distributed ledger technology and think about solutions for the whole industry. So blockchain also is an enabler to get together players of an industry which usually wouldn't talk about a common solution for something. The good thing also is that if someone is not participating in creating that technology or that standard for a certain industry, he usually would still benefit, because those players who try to run that new solution, they have to look for a maximum adoption of that solution. So the more participants using the new solution, the bigger the benefits are. So even if you're not actively participating in the development, your needs have to be taken into account to win you as a potential customer as soon as the platform solution is ready. And in the end, if there are different platform solutions in different industries, of course, there might be a link between them in future, because in many areas there are finance issues combined with insurance issues. So things will grow together and get together. But again, this is something where the ecosystem has to develop over time. But this happens right now, and I'm optimistic that it's positive in the end. How we are using blockchain technology, I briefly talked about it. So at the very beginning, it's more like automating existing processes, which are manual or paper-based. So this is not very disruptive, but it helps us to get experience with the new technology. and to see how it's working in a live environment. The next step would be then to optimize the processes based on the automated level. Here, for example, using smart contracts for potential IoT services in the future, and of course the data immutability. And in the end, it might disrupt certain business models, but this is the step-by-step approach, so it's not disrupting from the first moment onwards, but it's the iceberg issue. Whenever you see the iceberg, then there's happening a lot below, and for the time being, we are still seeing many projects below the radar, but I'm quite sure that there will be a lot of them coming up and showing real benefit in the later stage. If you are within the insurance industry or heard about certain developments in the insurance industry, I'm sure you have heard about the B3I Initiative. B3I stands for blockchain, and the 3I is Insurance Industry Initiative. That's the leading consortium in the blockchain industry, with most of the leading insurers and reinsurers. Founding members had been Allianz, Munich Re, Swiss Re, Zurich, and Aegon. They developed the first use case as a platform solution. It was so successful that they decided to create or to found a startup for B3I, which took place 2 years ago, and now there's a B3I Service AG located in Zurich, and it's about setting up a platform for contractual management between different reinsurance parties. So we started with the reinsurance area, but it for sure will be extended, if further successful, into the insurance world and further. How does it look like? Usually you have the primary insurer, the reinsurer, and the retrocessionaire. There's a reporting between the primary insurer and the reinsurer. Then there's a reconciliation about the figures. Then the same happens between the reinsurer and the retrocessionaire. Retrocessionaire is just someone giving reinsurance protection for an existing reinsurer to mitigate the risk and to have a certain portfolio. And here you can see everyone has his book. So in the end, everyone has his own book, and then it's always about comparing at the end of a quarter, what's the result of your calculation and what calculation does I have. And there's a huge reconciliation process, which is very cumbersome and error prone, and it costs lots of money. In the end, the idea with a blockchain solution is that all the stakeholders are working with one book. So everyone puts his data into one file, which is shared with the others depending on their access rights, so that the reconciliation and the money flow will be automated in the end, because it's just one single version of truth and everyone sees what is in there. We technically shouldn't have any reconciliation in the end. So it will be an automatic validation and then an automatic reporting and money flow. This is something which is transferable to other industries where we have stakeholders which share information, and A talks to B and B talks to C. And really the key and the benefit is to have something in common and to share something to have all those advantages. Applications and examples, I only mentioned 2 or 3 here. This picture you can see should give you an idea about who is involved in a supply chain. This is a project run by Maersk, the leading container ship carrier, and IBM. So if a container ship is loaded with different containers, then you have the port authorities, you have transport management, you have logistics, you have freights, you have many people involved in that. You also have an insurer most likely involved, because if, for example, something happens to a ship, it's very difficult nowadays to understand or to get the information. Have there been some goods on the ship which have been insured by a certain company? And if all those stakeholders in this process will be connected and share a common data cloud, then it would be very beneficial to get easier access to information and to accelerate processes like sending documents or other means. It's a good example. It's still in a test phase, but might be interesting to see how the further progress goes. A quick example to make more transparent what smart contracts will be able to do. The flight delay insurance. I don't know if you've heard about that. It was released by AXA. It was called FITSI. And there was a startup, EtherRisk. They had a solution for that too. The idea behind is, if you book a flight, let's say from Munich, where I am, to Amsterdam, and you want to avoid any negative effects by having either, of course, the flight cancelled or being late, then you can buy an insurance that's not about your passenger flight rights. It's just an additional insurance that you could do online. So you buy your flight, you buy for, let's say, 200 euro one way. You buy the flight delay insurance for 20 euro, and the insurance contract says if your flight is cancelled, then you get back additionally 100 euro. If the flight is delayed for 30 minutes, then you get back the 20 euro. If the flight is delayed for 1 hour, then you get 40 euros without proving that you have any negative impact. It's just about being late or not. So if you fly with a book flight and we assume that it's not cancelled, you will arrive at some point in Amsterdam, then the website of the airport will track and document when the expected flight has been landed. If it was delayed, then that information will be sent to the blockchain and the smart contract, and the smart contract will automatically compare what does it mean if the flight has now landed 35 minutes after the expected arrival time. That means that you get back your 20 euro. This will be then automatically advised via a bank withdraw, or you get a share of cryptocurrency and you get an information via a short message. So this is a process where no one has to interfere again. It's a nice tool, but interesting to see what else we can do with certain things. And the third example would be the car dossier, which you could transform for many other tools and many other items. Imagine if you construct a car, then the car has a certain number, then the car will be sold. The car has a first owner. All those data will be documented, immutable on a blockchain. The car has a device to track the kilometers. The car will get, or the information of putting the car to a service will be tracked here. So this will give you an identity of the car, which, for example, will help you to avoid manipulation in terms of kilometers if you sell the car. The information regarding how you will change. The owner of the car will be accelerated. So many interesting and useful tools with that. But again, still it's in a testing phase. It's nothing which went live for the time being. Very interesting. The process of innovation. You remember my first slide? Do I need a blockchain? No. What did blockchain do at the very beginning? The blockchain went to different business units and says, well, look, I have a flying car. Business units say, well, a flying car, that's great, that looks good. I want to have this flying car. Yeah, but first we will build a skateboard. Then we will further innovate this and further optimize it to get a bicycle. And then we will have a car, and in the end you will have a flying car. This is okay if you have a department which is dealing with innovations and is supposed to do innovations, but if you do have a business unit which has a pain point and needs a solution now, and you tell them you will have a flying car with that process in a certain time, then most likely the business unit will say, well, okay, but then you are not the right one for this tender. Come back if you do have the flying car. And there we have the problem. If we do not find something where we can develop and optimize this process to get real blockchain solutions, then it will be difficult. In Germany and other countries, we have a lot of activities in the blockchain area, but not comparable to what, for example, Ping An or other big players do. So still interesting to see how this will develop and when we will see first solutions which will be used in real world. What has changed already, and this is very optimistic, it's nowadays that we see blockchain solutions becoming part of certain tenders where we do not only choose between different blockchain providers, but here there we do have solutions where the underlying technology might be blockchain or a database solution brought by Oracle or SAP. So we do have to compete against the other solutions. And why is that? And this is one of my main points at the end of the presentation. Why do we have that blockchain, and what are the needs for the customers? Usually a customer will benefit from a new service or a new tool if it's quicker than something he has right now, if it's more secure or safer than an existing solution, if it's more convenient than an existing solution. Think about the various taxi apps you do have, and then you see Uber, which is even more convenient, independent about the underlying system behind it. But with one click, you already have paid your journey, which wasn't the case with a taxi app before. We just could order a taxi, but then you still have to pay it. I think they improved it too, but still the consumer, the customer is looking for benefits, for advantages, and convenience is one of them. Another one is if there's something just new which didn't exist before. If something is cheaper, of course, that's always a point for the business units. Or if something is more transparent. And the underlying technology to achieve those advantages is really not in the focus of the customer. So you can't convince a customer by a new service, a new product, only by saying, but it's blockchain inside. You have to show certain benefits and convince him with those benefits, so that then the technology really will give an advantage to the customer. And this is where we are still working on the ecosystem to have something where we can put on broader spaces. And for the platform solutions and the standards, it's more clear and more obvious than for the time being for single solutions which show a certain advantage over something. This is where the blockchain space is still fighting against. It might be but it might be helpful to see that many things get digital due to the COVID-19 environment. People work from home, people get more connected, people have to interchange on different areas. So the one-to-one contact is getting less for the time being. That might create some options to automate things which haven't been done before. So this could be something which pushes that a little bit more, but we will see. To the end, you might have heard about the Gartner hype cycle for emerging technologies. This is updated on an annual basis for various technologies, artificial intelligence, blockchain, you name it. What is similar to most of the technologies is that we do have a hype at the very beginning. Then it goes backwards again into the drought of delusions, where people thought, okay, it might be more beneficial than we thought. But still the question is, if and when we do need to arrive at the mass market. And there we are still fighting to get there. Again, I'm quite positive because the technology is really something new and really something which brings certain things forward, but sometimes it just depends on an ecosystem which has to be further developed and to achieve certain goals. But let's see. Would be interesting to hear, to understand what kind of experiences you did with blockchain technology in your companies and in your areas. I also expect that blockchain will become bigger if we find solutions to combine it with artificial intelligence or with IoT or sensoric. So things will merge together. But this is something where we just have to wait for further developments and to see how companies hopefully will use it in real life. And in the end, it's not important that you know that blockchain is inside. Again, if you can create some benefits like I showed for the customers, then I'm sure that the customer will use this new services. But this is something besides the cryptocurrencies where we still have to prove that this is possible. Coming to the end, I understood that we have a Q&A, and I would be more than happy if we do have at least one or two questions or feedback, or if you are still alive or fighting with your children at home or took a nap. So let me know how you are, and hopefully get one or two questions.
Thank you, Oliver. And so now it's Q&A section, and I think we still have 10 minutes left. Feel free to ask any question that you would like to ask Oliver here.
Hello, Oliver. This is York from Natixis in Paris.
Hello.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very good and as well entertaining. Thank you for the comments. I was not disturbed by the kids, so I could follow. One question, you did not mention any of the risks associated. I'm sure this could fill a completely different presentation, but what do you see as major risks in terms of cyber risks as well related to the new technology, blockchain?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's always difficult to answer that. My example I usually have is we might all know the good old times when we had to get money. We had to head to the bank, to the physical bank during the regular opening hours with our little bank booklet, and then we had to show our ID, or maybe the guy at the bank knows us, and then we got money. And this developed into, there had been ATMs where we could get money, and further we had online banking where we can transfer money, and we are fully independent from the physical bank, where I haven't been for ages. What does it have to do with your question? I think it was totally safe in the good old days to rob you, because you only could have been robbed on the way back from your bank, and this was maybe, the likelihood was very low, and maybe not the best for a robber to get your bank there, to get your money there. Using an ATM, that was more convenient, but also had the risk that you can manipulate the ATM, or you can rob the whole ATM. And the same with online banking. Online banking, if someone is hacking into the system and gets money, then he really gets money, compared to rob someone having got 50 euros from the bank. So what I will say, there are always some things are much more convenient, but there are certain risks. But usually the convenience and the advantages are bigger than the risk. So of course we have to take care and look into those risks. If we look into what really happened in the past, and you most likely all read about Bitcoins or other currencies got lost, got stolen or something, this always is an issue regarding the application. So remember again, your smartphone, you have your app and you have your operating system. The underlying operating system never was hacked. So this is for the time being safe and secure. It's always about the application, and there of course we have to make sure that very high security standards will be. In the end, it's like always the guy or the lady in front of the computer is always the weakest points, because if you have passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, then it's difficult. Another issue, this is really an issue regarding security, is if the programming code of an app is not correct, or if there are mistakes in, that could lead to issues which could cost you money. So there also has to be some securities that it's programmed as best as possible. Because if you once programmed a code which says if you type in 100 euro, the ATM gives you 200 euro, then it's really an issue.
Okay, thank you.
I hope this somehow answers a little bit your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? So I've seen that Phoenix also published an email address, office@conferenciaworld.com. So if you have questions afterwards, you can send it to there, and she will forward it to me.
Yeah, I think we still have the last 5 minutes left. Is there any more questions?
Yeah, Oliver, here's Klaus Palker from Deutsche. Maybe a quick question on your experience in the insurance segment being already live with B3I, I understand. Is that helping the players to gain that trust you are talking about when the technology is concerned?
Well, the good thing is in the insurance industry, there's a lot of trust, because in insurance and especially in reinsurance, we have relationships over the last 100 years, and they are all relationships where we are reinsuring part of company A and company A is reinsuring company B. So even if something, and that's also a reason why we started in that environment, even if there would be something which goes wrong and someone could use a mistake to have an advantage over someone else, they wouldn't do it, because we are still in business and we want to stay in business. So the trust is there, and no one would use a mistake in that area over someone else if it's obvious, because then we will sit together and see how to solve that issue. That's different if you have something offered to the end customer. So the end customer, many of them or some of them, wouldn't care about having a long-term relationship if they could have some short-term advantages where they are not reliable for. But therefore, the trust issue, it is an issue in terms of, if you think about the platform, the standard solution for a whole industry, what is a showstopper would be if I have a contractual relationship with company A, and I use the platform to optimize that, then of course I do not want that company B, C, and D see details of this relationship. So therefore, we have to make sure that the platform enables the exchange, but of course keeps the data and all the details secret or only available to the contracting parties. And this is also an issue regarding GDPR, that we make sure that no personal data will be stored on chain. You can then do it off chain, but those are things which play a role in that area too.
Yeah, thank you. I think we see that trust story being relevant also in the COVID-19 discussions by finding or potentially using the blockchain for any sort of health data, which is of course more critical.
That's always the case. If you have an advantage over something, but there might be a disadvantage, the question is, how big is the disadvantage? How big is the risk to do this? All the new technologies have something which can be critical in the end, but I think the whole digitalization brings data together, the whole cloud things. So if there's something goes wrong, then the impact will be much bigger than in the years in the past. But we somehow have to handle that. Yeah, we can't therefore say we are not using it, but we have to make our mind how to make it as secure as possible.
And sorry to interrupt here, because our next section is going to start in 2 minutes. So if you have any further questions, so feel free to send to the email address that I already put it in the chat room.
All right, so thanks for participating. Stay safe, keep optimistic, and if you're further interested in the topic, make sure you look not for the technical developments or technical issue, just look for applications and then go deeper and try to understand, is it just a proof of concept, or is it a minimum viable project, or is it live? That helps you to keep a little bit updated regarding this topic. And use the 50 euro to buy some cryptocurrencies. Really, it's worth it.
All right. Great. Thank you, Oliver. And thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.